And you are now live. Today we are going to try to understand a natural monopolies. Okay, we have already discussed, so we're trying to understand how do companies determine the best level of output, or how do they determine, the profit maximizing point. Where do they make the most profits? What level of production they're supposed to do, and what price they're supposed to charge. So this is what we have learned. We begin by discussing perfect competition. They are small. They all sell the same identical product. So the only decision left for them is to produce at the point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Then from there, we went to monopolies, and we said that monopolies have a little bit of a market power, and they do have market power because they are able to control the supply. Right? Monopolies is an imperfect market. They will try to charge a price as high as they can get away with it. And then we discussed oligopolies, and oligopolies is a market structure composed of few companies. They have a large majority of the market share. Oligopolies have a power, but the power they come in many cases comes as a result of coordinating activities or simply by trying to differentiate themselves. Oligopolies, they don't have a strategy about what price to charge, or they don't have a strategy about what level of output to produce. And the reason is because of the issue of oligopolistic interdependence, that the actions of one company creates counter reactions by another company. And then yesterday we discussed monopolistic competition. And monopolistic competition is an industry that is based by many producers. They're all small, and all of them produce somehow a similar product. The best example of monopolistic competition will be restaurants. They all sell the same products, just in small versions, or very small differences. Like I always say, a burger is a burger is a burger. I don't care where you buy it, right? There's just a little bit of differences. So that's monopolistic competition. So then monopolistic competition, they use the strategy that oligopolies use, the same strategy that perfect competition use, and that is to produce at a point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. The problem that monopolistic competitions have is that if they begin to make profits, this profit is going to attract competition. And it's very easy to come into this industry. There's no barriers to entry. It doesn't take a lot of brains to open a restaurant. It's industry that a lot of people can come and try to compete against them. So then monopolistic competitions can only make profits on the short run. On the long run, they will only be able to make a normal profit, right? So now we discussed that. So now the last one that we're going to be discussing today will be a natural monopoly. So the question is, what is a natural monopoly? Well, a natural monopoly is a monopoly. But we call them a natural monopoly because it's a monopoly that exists because of government protection. In other words, the government created a monopoly, or the government allowed for that company to be the only provider of that good. The best example of a natural monopoly would be utility companies. Think about the city that you live, right? In the city that you live, there's only one electric company. I live in Cleveland. If I want to buy electricity, there's only one provider, Cleveland Utilities. When I move to the county, now there's only one provider, and the only provider that we have is Volunteer Electric. So in other words, when you go to a city, you don't have choices about who you're going to buy the water from. There's only one provider. You don't have choices about the electricity. There's only one provider. Some cases you don't have a choice about the cable company. There's only one provider, right? So the question is, why do we have only one company providing all the output in one industry, in that industry or in that market? And the answer is because the government thinks that at that point, or at this point, is the best thing to do, right? So we're going to try to understand natural monopolies, the justification for natural monopolies, and the problem with natural monopolies, and how natural monopolies compare to other industries, okay? So let me go ahead straight into the PowerPoint presentation, and we will begin our lecture. Okay, so this is chapter 13, and we're going to try to understand the issue of natural monopolies. We're going to understand the characteristics, the dilemmas that the government faces when they try to control them. What is the cost of regulating natural monopolies? And how do they compare to industries that they are not actually regulated? As you already know, the government intervenes in the economy when the market is creating a market failure, right? So in many cases, the market creates the wrong type of products or the right mix of products, or probably even the way they produce the products is an undesirable way. For example, the market is providing a product that everybody wants to buy, but in order to provide this product, we have to kill the environment. let's say, for example, what is happening in Brazil. There's a lot of worldwide demand for beef. Well, to have beef, you have to have cows, and to have cows, you have to have open fields. Well, many farmers in Brazil, which some of them I personally know, many farmers in Brazil, they have expanded their lands by just simply burning, literally, the forest. So as you can see, they burn the forest to be able to destroy that so the animals will be able to go there. So what they are doing, they are producing a product that the market is demanding, but they're using undesirable methods of production. So then in situations like this, we know that the government needs to intervene, right, to try to correct the failures of the market. But what we also know that is in some cases when the government intervenes to correct a failure of the market, the government itself creates another failure, and that is government failure. Well, on this chapter, we're going to try to understand why the government regulates the markets, why the government regulates certain industries, right? And then we're going to try to understand, is this necessary? Do we need the government to try to regulate companies? How does the government regulate companies? And will it be better we just simply stop regulating the companies and go into deregulations of these companies? Okay? So think about this. Ideally, in a fairy world, the market is always going to be perfect. The market was going to answer the questions of what are we going to make, how are we going to make, and for whom we're going to make it. Right? But this is in fairyland. In real life, the market sometimes do not answer these questions the correct way. Right? Again, in a perfect world, all producers will be like perfect competition, which simply means they will be taking the price that we want to pay, and they're going to provide us what we want, and they're going to give us just the right product, and we're going to tell them about our taste, about the cost, and about the prices, and everybody's going to benefit if that was the reality. But the reality is that the market does not work like that. The market does not work in an ideal world. Right? In many cases, the market prevents optimal outcomes. Example of this would be, for example, the market demands drugs. The market demands drugs. There are a lot of drug addicts right here in this nation. People like to smoke pot, or they like to do crack, or they like to snort cocaine, whatever the case may be, right? The market is demanding that. And the market is providing this. We have entrepreneurs, we have businessmen all the way in Colombia that they are thinking about how can I pass this product that is in high demand in the United States. I want to supply this product. The problem that we have is that we have regulations that say this product cannot come into the market, so I have to find ways of bringing this product into the market. And these guys are firms, companies, that all they do is try to bring this product into the market. So now think about this. These drug dealers are happy because they are able to make money by bringing illegal drugs to the United States. And the drug addicts are happy because now they have the drugs that they need. But the rest of the society, people like me and you, probably we are not very happy about that situation. Now, why we are not happy around that situation? Well, because that market transaction between the drug dealer and the drug user has externality cost. It has some cost that we're gonna end up paying. For example, think about the drug addict. If the drug addict needs his drug and he don't have the money, this guy is going to be engaged in criminal activities. So then my neighbors are going to be exposed to a criminal activity as a result of that market transaction. So in situations like this, then we need government intervention. So then the question is, so how does the government regulate the market? How does the government regulate industries? There are two methods in which the government controls or regulates the market. One is by creating regulations, which simply tell you this is what you can do or this is what you cannot do. That's regulations. Or in some cases, the government intervenes by creating antitrust laws. And antitrust laws is nothing more than guidelines about how the market is supposed to operate. In other words, what we're trying to alter is the structure of the market. We want to stop abuse of market power. Antitrust laws, for example, an antitrust law will be like you cannot coordinate with your competition in price fixing. See, so that's an antitrust law. Remember, the oldest of all the laws that we have in the books is the Sherman Act of 1890 that simply say it is against the law for you to get together with your competitors to coordinate market activities. So those laws are still in the books. So we try to coordinate the actual behavior of companies And then we also try to regulate the actual actions that they take. So it's by antitrust laws and by regulations. So coming back to a natural monopoly. As you already know, a natural monopoly is a company that exists because of government protection. The question is, why do we allow natural monopolies to exist? Why do we have Cleveland Utility, the only provider of electricity? Now, and the reason is because for some reason, the government has created a justification in which they believe that by having only one company, this company is going to be able to achieve economies of scales. I mean, you remember what economies of scales is, right? We have been discussing about how cost of production change over time, and how when a company begins to produce, the cost of production tend to be very high. And as they begin to produce more and more, cost of production begin to decrease, okay? This is what I'm trying to tell you, okay? Hold on for a second. Let me see if I can find it right here. Okay, right here. Okay. When we have discussed the cost of production, we talk about fixed costs and variable costs and average variable costs and things like that. This is what we have learned. We have learned that the average total cost of production moves something like this, which simply means when a company begins production, let's say when the company opens its doors, right, cost of production is very high. But as they begin to produce more, then the cost of production begins to decrease, right? So the more you produce, the lower the cost of production. So if you produce this level of output, let's say a big level of output, then you are going to be able to experience economies of scale, which simply means you're going to be able to produce at a lower cost. And that's the justification that we use for natural monopolies. It will be like this. Think about a city like Cleveland, Tennessee. A city like Cleveland, Tennessee only has like 40,000 people, and another 50,000 people live in the county. So we have about 100,000 people in Bradley County, including the city of Cleveland, right? There's about 4 people per house. So we have about 25,000 houses in Cleveland, Bradley County, about 25,000 potential customers of electricity. Now, electricity is produced either by nuclear reactions or it's produced by hydroelectric production, by turbines on the river, right? So we have companies that produce the actual electricity. Here in Tennessee, we have a company called Tennessee Valley Authority, which is a semi-quals government private company. They have nuclear reactors that produce electricity. Then this company, TVA, sells the electricity to a distributor, right? The distributor buys the electricity from TVA, and then this distributor sells the electricity to all the potential customers. In this case, in Cleveland would be Cleveland Utilities. So as you can see, Cleveland Utilities is like the little 7-Eleven store, right? They go buy the merchandise from the producer. So the government say, what will happen if we allow more than one utility try to sell the electricity that they can buy from a producer to the same community? So as you can see then, because the cost of the delivery of the electricity to the consumers is very expensive. Think about having to build the infrastructure of all the electric poles and all the wires and things like that. So then we're going to have companies that are going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in creating the infrastructure to be able to deliver the product that these companies have already spent, let's say, millions of dollars, but the number of customers is not going to change. They still only have 25,000 customers. So then the only way, let's say, company 1 will be able to make money is if they charge a higher price. The same thing will be with company 2 and the same thing with company 3. So at the end, we're going to have 3 companies, trying to fight for 25,000 potential customers. So then there's no reason to have 3 electric companies trying to sell to only 25,000 when we can only have 1. Ignore this, we have 1, and this 1 will be able to deliver the electricity at a lower cost. So as you can see, this is the justification for allowing a natural monopoly. Right? We allow a natural monopoly simply, we believe that one company is going to be able to deliver the product at a cheaper price. Okay? Any questions? It's very simple to understand. So one company will be able to provide the good of service at a lower cost than if we allow several companies to compete. The average total cost, as you already know, is like a U-curve. So these companies will be able to produce at the lowest possible cost. Like I said, it takes a lot of money to be able to deliver certain products. So we're not going to allow a lot of companies spending money on fixed costs, you know, and then try to fight for the limited number of customers when it will be better just to have one company. So then a natural monopoly has a demand curve just like monopolies, the same story. See, we have the demand curve. If you want to sell more units, you have to lower the price so your marginal revenue begin to decrease. And a natural monopoly uses the same strategy that everybody else uses. They will stop producing where marginal cost equals marginal revenue, will be a QA. They'll produce QA, and then they will try to charge as much as consumers are willing to pay. So if this company is unregulated, what price is this company going to charge? I'm asking a question. What price is this company going to charge?
A.
Yeah, A going to charge the price of A. Is this company making money or losing money?
Making money.
They're actually making money, right? Because it only costing them D, right here, D, you know, to actually produce the product. And as you can see, they are able to sell it for A. So as you can see, all this right here is the actual profits that this company is actually making, right? Well, the problem with natural monopolies is this. Many people then ask themselves, is this natural monopoly that is unregulated, are they making money because they are good? Or are they making money because they are the only providers in town? So it creates some questions. So then what many individuals come to the realization is, look, if we're going to create natural monopolies, we are not going to allow them to take advantage of consumers. So that's when the government comes and regulates natural monopolies. So then the question is, how does the government regulate natural monopolies? Or how does the government regulate utility companies? I mean, that's more or less what we're talking about. Well, look at this. In some cases, the government says, okay, I'm gonna let you just operate by yourself. And you're going to be unregulated. So we allow the company to make profits. Right, that's one way. Let them do nothing. They can go ahead and make some profits. In some cases, the government say, look, I'm going to allow you to make profits, but I'm not going to allow you to make a lot of profits. You can just make a little bit of profits. So the government regulates the price they charge. So instead of you charging PA, I'm going to allow you to produce, but you're only going to charge PD. Right? So it's possible that a price of PD now, the company is going to produce a little bit more and they're going to make just a little bit more. They're still going to make profits, but not as much. Right? Or it is possible that the government will tell a natural monopoly, look, I'm not going to allow you to make more than a normal profit. So the government can force a company to charge a price of PC. Look at PC. It forced the company to provide more output all the way to QC, but you can only charge PC. So as you can see, at this point, the price is equal to the average total cost. So the company is only making a what? A normal profit, right? You can only make a normal profit. Or in some cases, the government can actually say, look, you know something? I'm going to control you and you can only charge a price of PB. Well, look at PB. As you can see, at PB, the price of PB is less than the cost of production. So then the company is losing money. So in a situation like this, the government will say to a company, you can charge this price, you're going to lose money, but I'm going to subsidize you, or I'm going to pay you the difference. So then the question is very simple. So then how does the government control natural monopolies? How does the government control natural monopolies? Right? They control natural monopolies by, looking at the maximum profits they can make. Right? In other words, by regulating the profits. Number two, they can regulate them, by allowing them to operate only with small profits. Right? Number three, they can regulate them by forcing them to only make a normal profit. right? Or in some cases, the government can regulate a natural monopoly by forcing them to operate at a loss. And then the government subsidizes them. So which simply means is this. In the case of a natural monopoly, let me see if I can create this. Demand, marginal revenue, marginal cost, average total cost. Okay, this is what happened. If the government say, I'm not going to regulate you, the company is going to produce for marginal cost equals marginal revenue. In this case, the company is going to be able to make profits. And as you can see, this is all the profits this company is making right here. This is all the profit the company is making, right? Because they are able to sell it at a higher price. They're able to sell it, let's say, at a price of 20, and it only costs them $16 to make it. The company is making profits, right? The government can say, you know something, I'm going to allow you only to make limited amount of profits, so you cannot charge more than $17. So then, as you can see, at $17 right here, the company is still making profits, but it's just a little bit less than before, right? Or the government can tell them, you know something, you cannot sell the product for more than $15, and at $15, as you can see, this company will produce this quantity, and at this point, the company is just making a what? A normal profit. Or the government can say, you know, you can only sell this product for $14, and as you can see, at $14, this is the average variable cost, but at $14, the company is losing money, but they are making enough, they're paying all the variable costs, but they are losing money, and the government simply say, I am going to pay you the difference. So then government controls natural monopolies by controlling their profits, and in many cases also by controlling their output. The government tells the companies how much they need to produce. Okay? Questions? Questions? As you can see, it's a very simple chapter in which we say how the government controls utility companies. Well, they control them by controlling the profits they make, or by controlling the output they're supposed to produce. If the company is unregulated, the government say, okay, go ahead and behave either way you like, well, the company will use just the approach of a monopoly, where marginal cost equals marginal revenue, and charge as much as consumers are willing to pay, right? But if they regulate them, we can force them only to make a normal profit. So then the options are price regulations, right? In other words, we regulate the price, right? Or profits regulations. Let me come back. We can regulate the monopoly by we regulate the price, or we can regulate the profits they can make. Just put it like that. We can regulate the price they're going to charge, or we can regulate the amount of profits they can make, right? So in some cases, we can also regulate the company by regulating the production, in which we tell the company, this is how much you need to produce. And if you are making money, okay. If you're losing money, I'll try to subsidize you as long as you produce what we need. Think about, for example, in places like, well, I'm just thinking out loud. Do you remember the fires that took place in California? You know, in which there were millions of dollars in losses. Who was responsible for that fire? Or those fires that took place last year in California? Anybody remember? It was the California something utility company. What happened is this: the electric company in California that provides electricity to that part of the country, the company have not updated the transmission lines, right? And during these high winds that took place, some of the lines broke and begin to create sparkles, and that sparkles create humongous forest fires. So then they were able to prove that the fires were not caused by natural situations, but the fires were caused by negligence of the company that they did not secure those cables. They had not been able to update them. So then there were billions of dollars in losses, in property losses. Well, the insurance company, think about this, companies that insure the homeowners, the insurance companies went ahead and paid the claims because they have to do that by law. But then right after they paid the claims for those houses that were destroyed, the insurance companies went out and went in what's called a recourse. They went out and sued the electric company to reimburse them for the amount of money they have paid to the homeowners. It's a recourse. So they went to these utility companies, and a lot of insurance companies went against the electric company, and the electric company simply did not have the money to be able to pay all those claims. I think it was like $10 billion in claims. So the company declared bankruptcy. The company declared bankruptcy. So now the question is, the company declares bankruptcy, should we go ahead and shut down the company? And that's when the government intervened and said, we cannot allow that company to shut down, because how long is going to take for somebody else to buy another electric company and create the infrastructure to deliver the electricity to these millions of people? So then the government came out and literally subsidized the utility company, so the utility company will be able to continue. And now the government controls the company and tells them exactly how much output they need to produce. In other words, they simply say, you cannot stop delivering electricity, right? So again, that's more or less, I guess that's an example that I can use to explain to you the problem of trying to regulate natural monopolies, okay? So we regulate the profits, we regulate the prices, or we regulate the output, okay? How much profit you can make, right? How much output you're going to produce. And like this, these options are conflicting. They are conflicting. So then the reality is this: the government has a choice between an imperfect market or an imperfect government intervention. See, I mean, that's the reality of utility companies, is the choice between an imperfect market and an imperfect government intervention. Does the government fails when they regulate companies? And the answer is yes, of course. So the end of result is government failure. And government intervention improves the economic conditions in many cases. And as a result of this, then instead of making things better, the government actually create a bigger problem, and that's government failure. Let me give you an example of government failure. It's going to be totally different than the natural monopolies, but just to explain government intervention in the economy. The economy is going in a recession today. 40 million people are out of work. The government decided to intervene in the economy to try to alleviate this problem by creating some type of unemployment benefits. The unemployment benefits is $600 per week in addition to the state benefit. Well, for some restaurant employees that they used to work for tips or for gratitudes, these individuals now, if they claim unemployment, they're actually making a bigger check than before they were working. So then if you are a waiter or a waitress of a restaurant and the restaurant is opening and they say, hey, we're going to open our business, come and work for us, it will be very stupid of you to go work and put your life in danger when you can make more money by just staying unemployed. So then the government intervention has created a government failure, that instead of improving the economic conditions, it actually makes the economic conditions worse because people have refused to go back to work. They just simply refuse to go back to work. And what is the options? Well, if you refuse to go back to work, a company can actually just fire you. And once they fire you, then you no longer qualify for unemployment compensation, because unemployment compensation is only given if you are laid off or you're on furlough, right? Or if you lose your job, not because of your choice. But if you choose not to go back to work and the company fires you, then you no longer qualify for unemployment compensation. And as you can see, this is a good example of what government failure can create. That in many cases, it makes the market worse, or the problem worse than market failure. In many cases, when we try to regulate an industry, what we end up is with an industry that's actually inefficient, that is actually just simply obeying government laws, and these government laws are outdated. So then the question is, what is the cost of trying to regulate a company? I mean, what is the cost? What is the cost of trying to regulate utility companies? Well, look at this. The cost is actually huge. We have the cost of collecting the information, on demand, cost, blah, 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 and we want to know what you're doing. Think about, for example, the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration. Think about the Federal Trade Commission. Think about the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, the Federal Communication Committee that regulates televisions and things like that. Right. So, or think about the FAA, the Federal Aeronautic Administration, that regulate commercial planes. So all these agencies spend a lot of money in trying to collect information about what's going on in the industry. Then, in addition to this, then they have to create bureaucracies, to be sure that these companies are in compliance with the agency regulations. Think about, for example, the the FCC, the Federal Communication Committee. How many people we have that work for that agency? Or think about the government, the nuclear regulatory agency. The nuclear regulatory agency that regulates the companies that produce nuclear energy in the United States. I mean, for example, just to give you an idea, my sister-in-law, okay, from my late wife, she's a young woman and she lives in Washington, D.C. She only has a 12th grade education. Right from high school, she started working, as a secretary, in Washington, D.C. for a small company. Then she started moving, not to make the story long, she now works for the Federal Regulatory Agency. And she's still an assistant, a secretary to one of the executives right there, a low-level entry worker. But she has been with the company for about 30 years. For about 30 years, I've been with this company, or with this government agency, the Nuclear Regulatory Agency, and her salary is about $147,000. So now we have a young woman, 50, that works for a government agency, and she's only one of thousands. And all of them have very high-paying jobs. Now, why, or what are they doing? What is the contribution they are making to society? And the only contribution they make into society is that they are regulating certain industries that probably they don't need regulation. And again, that's the cost of regulating industries. That's the cost of regulating industries. Okay, so creating staffing bureaucracies, right? In addition to that, then not only the government spends money on trying to regulate the companies, but then we also have the amount of money that the companies have to spend in trying to comply with the regulations. For example, in the United States, for every dollar a company spends in production costs, every dollar they spend in production costs, 10 cents of that is just compliance, which simply means a company spends on the average 10% just to comply with government regulations. Just to comply with government regulations, to be sure that they are complying with what the government is saying. I was just thinking, for example, my wife worked for the trucking industry, and they have 5,000 drivers all across the United States delivering goods and services, right? The Federal Transportation Administration regulates these drivers about the number of hours you can drive, right? Because it's dangerous for you to be driving if you have lack of sleep. So they have a number of hours they can drive during the day. Well, the question is, how do we comply, or how do we know these guys are obeying the law? Historically, these individuals used to take what's called a log. I got up at 8:30 in the morning and I'm driving. And so when the highway patrol will stop you, you have to show them the log and they'll look to see if there's any discrepancies. But now we don't do that. Now they do it with electronic logs, which simply means the car automatically, every time you start it, automatically begins the clock. When you turn it off, it turns off. When you're moving, it's recording. When you stop moving, there's no way you can hide the hours not moving. So they know exactly how many hours the truck was moving, in X number of hours during the day. So now the company have to update these instruments or these GPS trackers into every truck. And then they also have to hire people that actually read the information on those GPS trackers on a daily basis. So then the company literally spending millions of dollars in complying with just that one regulation. And the regulation is a driver cannot drive more than 10 hours a day. See? So again, that's the problem with government regulations, not only for natural monopolies, but for any industry, Yeah. So when the government intervenes, then in many cases, what we're going to end up doing is going to have an we're going to alter the mix of output. So in other words, some companies simply say, this industry is not profitable, I'm just going to move and do something else. So then we are not going to have that. We are not going to have that because nobody will be interested in working in that industry that is incredibly heavily regulated. I'm thinking, for example, the way we regulate fishermen, people that go out and fish. In the United States, for example, you're gonna go out and get tuna, you have to go out there and get it with an actual hook, right? You have to put it to the hook and the tuna will grab and you put it in that thing. But in other countries, those regulations do not exist, right? And the people over there, they go out with a net and boom, they can be more efficient, right? So then for an American, probably say, this is not the industry in which I need to go because I'm not gonna make money. So as a result of this, we're going to end up now an alteration of the output, which simply means the fish that we're going to eat, they're not going to be caught by American producers, but it's gonna get caught by Chilean producers or people from Taiwan or people from Japan, right? Because they don't have those regulations that we have. Again, we're trying to understand the failure of government intervention in the market, okay? Again, what else? Well, this is more or less what the chapter is trying to tell you. Look, if we're going to regulate the company, we need to figure out exactly how much is going to be the cost of that, and then how much is the benefit that we expect to receive, which simply means that if you're going to do some type of control, look at the marginal benefit and look at the marginal cost. If it's gonna cost you $1 million in trying to regulate a company and you're only gonna get $500,000 in benefit, then why do that? I mean, we know this. I mean, we know this is simple, basic marginal benefit, marginal cost approach. That simply means you're supposed to engage in an activity as long as the benefit outweighs the cost. But if the cost of doing something is higher than the benefit you're going to receive, then it will be very stupid of you to do it. The private sector does that. The private sector says, okay, think about, for example, the car manufacturers. Let's go back 5 weeks ago. Car manufacturers. The production of cars came to a halt. Now, there was a demand for ventilators. So then companies came to the realization, okay, what should I do? Should I shift my production to ventilators? Right? So then the question is, how much is my benefit by doing that? There was, how much money am I going to make by shifting my production to ventilators? And then they look, okay, how much is going to be the cost of me doing that? How much is going to be the cost of me to reprogram all my machinery to do a product that I had never done before? So for some companies, they say, I cannot do it because the cost is going to be less than the number of ventilators I'm going to sell to you. So I'm not going to do it. So that's why some companies say, I'll do it only if you subsidize me, like Ford. Ford was able to come to the government and say, you can guarantee me that you're going to buy 1 million ventilators for me, and you're going to give me X amount of credit, then I shift one of my production plants into ventilators. So the government say, okay, boom, now Ford is doing those ventilators for which there's no demand now. There's no demand. Where are those ventilators? Right? So as a result of this, then now the government is trying to say, okay, we're going to store some for the future, or we're going to go ahead and try to give them to other nations that they are in despair. Okay? So again, the problem with government decisions is that they never take into consideration, well, not never, but in many cases, they don't take into consideration the marginal cost, marginal benefit of an activity, right? So the government, instead of doing a marginal cost, marginal benefit analysis, what they do a decision based on ballot economics. Ballot economics, which simply means, how many votes am I going to get? How many votes am I going to get? Okay, so will it be a good idea just simply to deregulate companies? To deregulate, let them operate without government regulations. So this is what we know. Industries that they are heavily regulated tend to be less productive than those companies that don't have regulation. In other words, there's a benefit of not regulating companies, right? Many people say that with advanced technology that we have now, the advancement in technology destroys the reason for regulation, because the technology itself is more clean, it's more environmentally friendly, it's more, I guess, people friendly. So then those companies don't have to be regulated, right? Another reason we say, well, in the past we used to regulate natural monopolies because we say that a natural monopoly was going to take advantage of consumers if we left them unregulated. But now, on modern times, we believe that if you're a monopoly and you try to take advantage of consumers, the consumers themselves are going to respond. They are not going to buy from you. And now there's a lot of methods in which you can find a substitute. In other words, think about this, for example. Let's assume that Cleveland Utilities decide, well, the government say to Cleveland Utilities, you're going to be unregulated. And Cleveland Utilities begin to increase the prices. How people are going to respond? Well, sure, immediately, there's nothing we can do. We have to pay the prices if we want electricity, right? But as the prices continue to go high and high and high, then consumers begin to find ways of reducing the consumption of electricity or just moving to another substitute. So then new technology will come into place. A company from the Netherlands will come here and say, hey, by the way, I can put electric panels on your house for this amount of price, and it will be cheaper than the electricity. Another company from, I don't know, from Sweden will come and say, hey, we have developed these gas generators, that you build in your house. You have your own electric generator. You don't have to buy from the city. It was like, think about these people, these wealthy people that have farms, ranches, these beautiful houses. They have their own generators. They have diesel generators that can operate for a month, without having to refuel them. I mean, so very efficient. At this point, they are very expensive. That's why not everybody has them. But they are substitutes for everything. There's substitute for electricity. There's substitute for water. If you try to sell me the water very, very, very expensive, I'll pay somebody to make a well in my farm, right? Or I'll go ahead and just bring the tanks full of water. So in other words, that's why so many people say we don't have to regulate natural monopolies now, because now there's a lot of substitutes that can substitute the product that natural monopolies sell. You say, look at what we have done to the cars, the trucks, the airplanes, the pipelines. We have deregulated all these companies, and all these companies now are better, right? So then, as a result of this, then it is time for us to deregulate the few companies that we still regulate, right? Because if we deregulate the company, then this company has more freedom to compete, right? And if they are a competitor, or they're going to compete, then prices tend to decrease. We used to regulate the airline companies, for example. And we used to tell them how much they're supposed to charge per mile on the air. And now, as a result of deregulation, flying is an everyday event for individuals. By the way, guys, the idea of flying by plane, if we go back to the 1970s, only the wealthy, only the rich people used to travel. Travel was a luxury that very few people were able to do it. I remember the first time that I went on a plane. The first time that I went on a plane was in 1978. And I was 18 years of age. I flew from San Antonio, Texas to Honolulu, Hawaii. That was my first flight in my life. From San Antonio, Texas to Honolulu, Hawaii. And it cost me, I still remember this, it cost me $1,200 to buy the plane ticket. This is in 1978, guys. I had to sell my car. I sold my little Volkswagen Beetle, right? To be able to get enough money. I know, sir, now it hurts me. I had a 1968 Volkswagen Beetle, and I sold my Volkswagen Beetle for $1,200 to be able to pay for my ticket to go to Hawaii, because I wanted to go see my girlfriend at that time, who eventually became my wife, right? So that $1,200, right? We go now 40 years later, 41 years later, 42 years later. right? And I can fly to Honolulu, Hawaii for $400, a fraction 40 years later. So everybody can afford flying, right? So, and that happened as a result of deregulating the airline companies. We tell the airline companies, look, you know, it's up to you what you want to do. So companies begin to compete, and competition decreases prices. So I remember, for example, the cost of telephones or telephone communications. You know, we only used to have one company, Bell, used to call Ma Bell. That was the provider of telephones. And they used to charge you by the minute. One call from Cleveland, Tennessee to Chattanooga, Tennessee was a long distance call, right? And you had to pay by the minute. Okay, so the question is, well, if deregulation works, why we don't deregulate everything? And the answer is, well, because there are some industries that they need to be regulated. Deregulation works, but it's not perfect. So then the reality is that we have a choice between market failure or government failure. So the idea that we're going to stop deregulating every industry, the answer is that's never going to happen. Because there are some industries that definitely they need to be regulated, because if not, they're going to destroy the environment, right? Or they're going to destroy the planet. Think about, for example, if we say to people around the world, there's no regulation on how many fish you can get out of the ocean. You know, how long will it take for all the fish in the ocean to be depleted? I think that in a couple of days, we'll run out of everything. Or how about this regulation say, hey, there's no regulations about, you know, expanding your production, even if you are polluting the environment, right? In other words, we can destroy the planet just simply, you know, by not regulating companies. And guys, and this is the end of the chapter. This is the end of the chapter. So we can stop right here and just give you the rest of the hour for you to continue getting your ideas together and work on your project that is due next Thursday. And then tomorrow we go into the next chapter. And the next chapter is on, let me remember what the chapter is about. Okay, let me come right here. Okay, so let me stop this recording. Okay, so we have finished the chapter of natural monopolies, chapter 13, and tomorrow we're going to begin chapter 14, which is the chapter on pollution controls. How the government tries to get rid of pollution or control pollution. And again, it's another very simple chapter, and I think you're going to enjoy that. Okay, any questions, guys? Well, if we have no questions, then we will stop right here. Again, I already approved the topic that you were going to discuss next Thursday. So please continue working on that, and then we'll have the presentation on Thursday.